Well, hey there. How you doing? Dave Fennoy here, and happy Wednesday to you. And just want to say, welcome to another Ask Dave Fennoy Anything. Want to remind you also that these live on my YouTube channel after the fact, Dave Fennoy Voiceover Training. If you're interested in coaching with me, davefennoy.com. And speaking of coaching, I was talking about last week, I had Terry Berland on, casting director. And Terry, I'm doing a workshop with her February 12th and 13th, 10 to 5 p.m. both those days. It will be via Zoom, and it's just about sold out. So if you'd like to join up, you better go to terryberlinworkshops.com sooner rather than later. Of course, I'm sure there will be room for you if you'd like to become what I call flies on the wall. You get to see and hear it all. Most people call it somebody who's auditing, but I think it's just more fun to say, hey, you're a fly on the wall. You get to see and hear it all. Anyway, I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing one of my favorite people on the planet, a very good friend of mine. And we have been fighting this voiceover battle for decades together. And he's just an interesting guy, profound, funny, and he's got as much gray hair as I do, if it's not as long. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bill Ratner.
Dave Fennoy, ladies and gentlemen, Dave Fennoy on the hair.
Playing the hair. There we go. Yay, there we go. So good to see you, man.
You too, man. What fun! What fun!
I'm telling you, it's been a while.
It's been a while because what is this? 23 months of strangeness.
23 months of really not running into too many people that you know. Just every now and then you get to do it. But I'm here to interview you. And one of the best things about doing this is when I bring friends of mine on, I learn things that I didn't know. Like when I came to town in 1990 and signed up with SBV, I believe you were a client of SBV at that time, and I don't really remember where we met, but I think it was in the lobby at Sutton Barth and Venari.
Yeah, could be where all these big voiceover stars passed by. The great Ernie Anderson.
I met Ernie Anderson my first day there, and I grew up in Cleveland, so he was the voice of Channel 5 in Cleveland, and he played Goulart. He turned blue, purple caniff. It was a #1 show at night on Friday nights, and he played terrible horror movies, and he hung out in between scenes as this ghoulish beatnik. It was insane. Turn blue, purple caniff. Hey, they're wearing white socks.
He was a huge star. I was on a flight from New York back to LA, and I met two guys who had written a biography of the great Goulardi, and they had worked for the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the newspaper. And I said, wait a minute, I work for Ernie Anderson. I mean, I not work for him, I work with him at ABC. You and I were at ABC when Ernie was there doing promo. And I said, Ernie's an interesting guy. He's a cool guy. He's loyal to his friends, but he doesn't seem that happy with all this success and millions of dollars. And they told me the story. They said he was a huge star. When you were just talking about Goulardi, Goulardi was everywhere on every station on the East Coast except in New York City.
Yeah.
And was in every parade and on the tongue of every teenager and fan, from Cleveland to Buffalo. And when he got out here, although he looked like Alec Guinness, he's a good-looking guy, he was asked to be on camera. He tried on camera. He said, "I don't want to memorize my damn lines. Forget this crap." And became
voiceover people can get so spoiled about memorization.
Yeah, but along with the camera went the fame.
Yeah,
and these guys, Theory, who interviewed him for many, many hours and wrote the book about him, said he was in the limelight and he went away to make more money, But the voiceover world an interesting but quiet and shadowy place.
Especially then. Less so now, but especially then.
Yeah.
So he couldn't be satisfied with just making millions. He was the first huge superstar of voiceover as the voice of ABC and the voice of Ford.
On ABC. He used to walk into the post production studio where we did our voiceovers. And if I happened to be in his chair, which you and I were, I mean, they brought in younger guys. And he would say, I'd
Yeah,
go,
we were
"Hi, Ernie."
younger guys back then.
Yes, right. Hi, Ernie. And he'd say, "How long's this shit going to take?" and, I'd say, "Well, I'm trying to do it in a French accent." He said, "Yeah, I'm going to go have a cigarette."
Um, it's interesting. There's a whole outtake somewhere on the internet that you can find outtakes of Ernie Anderson where he is cussing out producers and writers. But what they learned was once you stood up to him and said, "Hey, Ernie, cut the shit. We got work to do," he you know calmed down. But
Yeah,
I've
there's a story about a 26-year-old woman who was a copywriter, and he pulled that. Oh, who wrote this crap? I mean, I can't, blah blah blah. And she came up to the window and on the other side, the producer's side of the booth, and said, "Mr. Anderson, um, I was just hired by the advertising agency to write this copy, and I'm very proud of it, and it's been approved. And would you please read it?" And nobody had ever spoken to him honestly that way before. And he goes, "Yeah,
yeah,
sure, whatever you want."
he had a facade going on. I remember meeting him the first time, and Ernie Anderson, hi, I'm Dave Fennoy. I'm from Cleveland, and I watched you as Goulardi turn blue, purple caniff, and it's just a pleasure. Hi, kid, how you doing? And out he went. And anyway, enough about Ernie Anderson. Let's talk Bill Ratner. How did you get into this wacky business?
Well, I was a very lucky kid as a little boy. My dad worked in advertising, and he bought us our first television set when I was 5 years old. And these two guys had to wheel, it was bigger than a refrigerator back then. They wheeled the thing in, took it out of the cardboard box, set it up, plugged it in, and said, "Enjoy." And he came in and he said, "I'm going to show you how to work this thing. You twist the volume control, you're going to hear a little click, it turns on." And of course, televisions back then took a long time. You'd hear this something like bacon frying. And then the picture would come on, this odd little porthole that was like a pea green
Mm-hmm.
glass. And he said, "That's it. You turn it on, you watch it. Don't get too close, or it'll burn your eyes out. Have a good time."
And how
And
many
then
how many channels did you have then?
I think we probably had three.
Yeah.
The network affiliates. One of them was WHO in Des Moines, and but he did what Ernie Anderson did for the great Paul Thomas Anderson, the film director,
Yeah, well,
with
that's
Liquid.
he's Ernie Anderson's son.
Yeah, exactly. And what Ernie told me the story once. He would sit with his kid and go, "We're going to watch some movies, kids, the monster movies. You love that crap. You're 8 years old. Now look at that edit. Look at that edit on there. Look at how that gets. Look, see, he's in the car. Then they cut to the blah blah blah." And that's what he did, and that's what made Paul Thomas Anderson. My dad did the same thing with advertising. We'd sit there watching Gunsmoke and The Virginian and all that stuff that was on. And he'd go, "Look at that Ford thing. They shot that thing wrong. That thing ought to be up on the hill and coming down at us, not the kid. These guys are idiots, let me tell you." And then he would take me to work and show me the airbrush guys who drew pictures of the Cadillacs and introduced me to the big fat announcers with the three-piece suits who would go in there and announce like they were opera singers.
And this was an age where you went to the studio to work and
Yeah,
you dressed up.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. In fact, it was in the contract of the network radio announcers back in the 50s, up into the 60s, that they had to wear tuxedos in order to bring the microphone.
Despite the fact that they were not on camera.
Right. That's right. Because they had live audiences and so on. But I remember when I was 5 years old, having been introduced to the use of the television set. I was watching some crap in the afternoon, Captain Movie and the we'll be right back. And then on came a commercial during the commercial break. And the off-camera announcer said, "This commercial message will be 60 seconds long." And I was in kindergarten and I was struck and I counted. And it was, Plymouth for 1953 and blah, 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 blah. And when it was over and they cut back to the show, I ran into the kitchen. "Mom, I know what a minute is." "What's that, dear?" 60 seconds. "Oh, did you learn that in kindergarten?" "No, the man on TV told me." "Oh, you mean Captain Burger Kiki?" No, he was invisible. So I, at age 5, was aware of this character who came on. You couldn't see him. He was invisible, like the Wizard of Oz. And he sold everything from cigarettes to the next television show coming up to the movies playing down at the Boulevard Twin Matinee. And I thought, I'd like to be that guy because he sounds like this and he seems to know everything.
And so, from 5 years old to your first job, how'd you get there?
When I was 12 in sixth grade, my friend John Waterhouse, who was in seventh grade, introduced me to the possibility of turning an AM radio into a public address system. And he made a phone call to me on a Saturday morning. "Bill, I'm at Jim's TV down at 46th and Bryant." And he showed us how to solder a microphone to the volume control. And so he and I and Steve Gray and Skipper Hastings and John Barstow, friends of mine on the block, all stole radios from our parents. And my father, there's this big, beautiful, like 18-inch high wooden cathedral radio that my father had painted pink. For some reason, he thought, well, we've got some house paint left over. I'll just paint the radio pink. True story. Why he did it, he could never explain. I took that radio. We took the amplifier out of the cases of these radios and soldered these little microphones to the volume control, which shorted out the signal from the AM radio stations. And suddenly we were listening to ourselves. Wow, I sound great.
And how old were you again?
12.
Yeah.
And
So
I didn't quite sound
voices
like.
hadn't quite changed yet. You were
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
the voices where they were cracking like that.
It was like this, but it was, a form of adolescent narcissism where you can suddenly hear yourself amplified, and nothing's changed since.
Well, listen, I'm going to pause for a little second here. We've got some people want to say hello to you. Michael Glover there. Bill, you were Erdina, or is it Edina? Udina. You were a jerk from the get by Mass Effect 3. I wanted to slap you, meaning you kicked butt. Impressive job, sir. I am a huge fan of Mass Effect. Mass Effect 4. Can you tell me, Bill, between you and I? You know
Michael, yeah,
you
thank you,
know he
buddy.
had to sign an NDA.
Okay.
I got another one for you.
I'll just tell the judge, that I forgot I had to sign it. The truth is, I think 4 has already been made.
Ah,
And yeah, Udina was a jerk, Michael. Thank you. You're absolutely right. He's a jerk from the beginning. He was a sleazeball and a liar, and classic politician.
that's
And
probably why you loved playing him so much.
yes, it's a deep part of me. They
Now,
killed him
wait,
off in
now,
the
what
episode.
was that accent you had in there?
It was sort of a crock, sort of an Irish sort of thing, but without any soul whatsoever. And I would cross into Transylvania every now and again and get back to Dublin. But yeah, Michael, thank you. Thanks for the memories.
Oh, wait, I got one more, all the way from France. Luc de Villard. Hello, both of you gents. And what a surprise to see the dear Ambassador Udina on flesh. I think he means in the flesh. Dear Monsieur Ratner. And what was your inspiration for the character, and what did you think of the whole Mass Effect scenario? Kind regards.
Thank you, Luke. Mass Effect started a few years ago when the technology was a little more primitive than it is now, or considerably more primitive. I mean,
Yeah,
it
oh, yeah.
just keeps advancing and advancing. And I recorded, I think, 2 episodes or two editions rather, over a period of a couple of years of Mass Effect, and finally said to someone, "Gee, I'd love to see what this looks like." And they directed me to a link, and I was really blown away. I'd never seen animation like that before.
Yeah.
It was kind of a dark, complex, and political story. But I
That's
haven't.
very much the difference between video games and animation in general. Not that there's not humor in video games or drama in animation, but you go much darker, much deeper in video games typically than animation. And speaking of which, G.I. Joe.
Yo Joe. Yeah, GI Joe was really fun. I mean, somebody asked me. We're talking almost 40 years ago, when Hasbro was having trouble selling GI Joes 12 inches tall, and people had gotten tired of him. He was like the male Barbie, and
I think Ken would have something to say about that.
Star Wars had come out with their 3.5 inch tall, billions of dollars worth of action figures. And so Hasbro finally decided, gee, we're going to go to Marvel and see if they'll do a comic book for us, which served essentially as a print display ad for characters in G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe became the Joe team, and started with about six of us on a mini series of 5 episodes, which sold well to individual stations. Networks didn't want G.I. Joe. They thought it was too violent. Parent groups are going to get upset, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the 2 years, we did 52 episodes. There were, I think, about 85 different characters on the Joe team. And our union, the Screen Actors Guild, happened to have issues with employers, from Disney to United Artists to everybody else, who were
Oh no,
saying,
not Disney. Are you trying to say the mouse is a rat?
though, that Walt didn't like the unions here in town. And they were having actors do 25 voices in a session, and
Wow.
actors were wearing out their voices, were coming to work like this. And the union said, you can have three voices for the day rate that you're paying, but if you want to do more, you got to pay more. And the employers, from Disney to United Artists to Universal, said, for cartoons, no way, we ain't paying, go on strike. So the Screen Actors Guild did go on strike, and that, of course, included us. And Deke, that was distributing
Oh
GI
boy.
Joe, said, "You guys do that, we're going to Canada." So that was the end of everybody but Destro and Cobra Commander. Those two actors continued working, but the rest of us were out of a job. And so season 3 and 4, everybody sounded like this. Oh, it was so cold out there. I got my tongue stuck to
Yeah, don't you
battery.
know?
Yeah, oh yeah, they were all from
Get out in the boot.
Montreal.
Yeah. So, well, listen, you're one of the most versatile voice actors out there. A lot of people specialize. Not that it's a bad thing to be a one-trick pony. Don LaFontaine certainly did do fairly well with that. But you've been a fixture in the promo world for a long time. Like you say, we were both voices at ABC for a while. You had a local station here in town. I don't know. You might still be the voice of that. I might not be. I might not be watching that station. Are you still the voice of a station in town?
Well, it was a very lucky thing. Ernie Anderson dominated ABC, and then they brought younger guys like you and me and many others into work, and we ended up working every day for years at the network. And the creative director at Channel 7, which was literally across the tarmac on the Prospect lot in Hollywood, said, "Gee, do you want to come work for Channel 7?" And they had a great union contract, and so I would just walk across the road and go to work there. I worked there for 22 years, and
Oh,
realized that with ISDN and with a wonderful thing called the fax machine, and then email and blah blah blah, and agents who would syndicate us across the country, starting with people like Howard Stern, the Greaseman. Guys like you and I and others got to work all across the country. I ended up sort of marketing myself for a while because the agents didn't quite get the fact that we could sell ourselves to TV stations, radio stations, cable networks. And then a few of them caught on. And
Oh, you know what it sounds like, and exactly what it was. This was the technology of the time changing the business, just like the technology of now has changed our business so much.
yeah.
Where you went from, well, I'm in this town, I can be a voice on this station, to, oh, I can market myself around the country and be the voice of numerous stations.
It's interesting. I mean, a lot of people take voiceover classes these days in the same way that people take maybe a journal writing class or a dance class or whatever. But in the back of many of their minds is the hope that they might make some bread at it.
Well,
And
I think when they're spending the bread to do it, that's exactly what the
yeah,
hope is. Uh,
well, that's exactly what I did. I mean, I came here when I was 31 years old and spent 6 years taking voiceover workshops in person. And had I not done that, with all kinds of characters, ex DJs and casting directors and so on,
Hi, let me tell you how to be a voiceover actor. You've got to
it,
make
it
your
was
voice sound like this. No.
it was the best thing I ever did. And one of the things I learned is that many of us from elementary school on were making fun of the teacher. And yeah, this is Miss Tenenholz who talks like this. And this is the television that sounds like this. So, uh, and many of the, as having done a million computer games and cartoons and everything else, um, yes, you can specialize, but I mean, we've heard it all. Everybody listening and watching the show has heard it all, from commercials to promos to movie trailers to games. And those of us who imitated all of this through adolescence, uh, into college, into golden age, are still doing it for money.
Well,
And
it's interesting. Whoa, yeah, well, we're introducing you again there.
hey, thank
Um,
you. Hey, guys.
well, that's for all the wonderful things you were saying, but
Yeah.
uh, looking at it now, I think that's still the case. The people who, were goofing off in class and were copying the cartoon voices they heard, creating voices of their own, little did they know it. I didn't know it when I was a kid. I was just having fun. Little did I know I was preparing myself for this career. And from time to time, I begin working with somebody that wants to do work in video games that hasn't done that. They weren't that person. They're into video games. They want to do it, but they're starting behind the eight ball because they never did it for just the joy of it. And I'm constantly saying, look, yeah, you can do it, but just have fun with this first. Uh, be brave. Make a fool of yourself. A lot of us were used to making a fool of ourselves in class, in front of our parents, in front of an audience of family and whatnot. And I think that's important training.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who sings, everybody who was in a rock band in high school, everybody who was ever in a play in college, um, we're certainly doing it for fun. There was no money in it,
Yeah.
and it's not so much about hearing the sound of your own voice. Most of us are embarrassed when we hear our voices until you get used to it. It's practicing the ancient art of rhetoric, of song, of poetry. The great late Don LaFontaine
Uh,
said to me, I know why you do voiceovers, Bill. You got a nice voice, but you're not doing it from here. You're not doing it from the heart. He actually said this to me after a union party, and I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to listen to what Don has to say. And he said, just get a volume of poetry and take it down into your studio and just read it. Just read it quietly. Do it from here. And it was the best advice that I had ever gotten in my life.
yeah.
And he was a guy who was not trained as an actor. I think he was brought up by his aunt and uncle in Duluth, Minnesota.
Yeah.
At 17, he lied his way into the U.S. Army and ended up as during
Because he
peacetime.
had that voice, they believed him.
He was the recordist for the Army band. That was his gig in the Army. And his boss when he got out, brought him to New York and said, "You want to be my assistant in the recording studio? We're going to do radio spots for Universal." And that's how he started. So he was not trained as an actor and an
He
announcer.
also was a video editor.
Yeah, into
And,
his
and that's how
40s.
he got the trailer thing going. He was a video editor, and he started putting his voice on some of his edits so they could kind of see where the voice should fit. And after a while, they were, you know what, forget the guy we hired. Who is this guy?
Right. And he didn't even realize that that's what he wanted to do until he was in his 40s. And Steve Tisherman, the great agent, had to chase him down for up to 2 years. Don, please, please, you can make more money in
Wow.
this. You
Wow.
don't have to sit in an editing console. So Don was like, I believe, about 42 years old when he finally said, all right, I'll do it, I'll do
Well,
it. And then
he did okay.
and had so much fun at it. I
Yeah.
mean, he made fun of himself. Uh, those wonderful insurance commercials where he was actually on camera, standing at a microphone, in a kitchen where a woman would say, "I had a terrible car crash," and then Don would come on making fun of himself. It was a dark night. She was in a Chevrolet, and so he had a ball being Don LaFontaine, who realized in middle age that he was a man of a thousand voices.
With just one.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
just one. Yeah, he was.
Without
You never know where one of these Ask Dave Fennoy anything is going to take you. I wasn't thinking we were going to go down memory road like this, but I'm loving it. And it's so nice to have memories of Don from somebody else who knew him.
Well,
Uh,
the thing I think that's helpful to people who are watching, who are into voiceovers and want to get more into it, is you can go on YouTube and you can Google, you can search Don LaFontaine, you can search Ernie Anderson, the great heroes, and the best thing you can do, other than taking classes from Dave Fennoy, the best thing you can do is listen to the greats.
yeah,
In the same way that an actor who to this day, um, who's doing Hamlet, uh, watches all the greats doing Hamlet and the
yeah.
old films.
I often liken voice acting and listening to the people who came before you, or even contemporaries who you would like to be like, to a musician who's learning the licks of their favorite guitarist or saxophone player or keyboard player, and you practice and you practice and you get their stuff down, but sooner or later, you have to make it your own.
That's exactly the same metaphor. I mean, how many times have you heard interviews with a great rock guitarist, I mean, from Keith Richards on, who say, my daddy bought me the 45 of blah blah blah, and I and I
BB
and I wore it.
King.
Right, right, and I wore it out because I kept playing the licks over and over and over. The little lick, well, right after he says blah 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 for 6 seconds, and I do it to this day. Whenever you get a gig that I audition for, I go, "Oh, Dave, and I got the gig again," and then I will go and listen to your demo. I'll listen to Scott Rummel's demo. I'll listen to Joe Cipriano's demo, all the guys who are working and getting the big gigs. And I will listen to that 6 seconds of Disney presents, blah, 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 blah. And I will do it in the same way that the young guitarist is doing that 6 second lick over and over. Not because I want to imitate, but I just want that rhythm that obviously I didn't have or I would have gotten the gig.
Well, and the other thing I think you find, Bill, is all the people who are doing well, did well, became legends of some sort. Um, they really were doing themselves.
Yeah.
It's a thing that is instantly recognizable. I'm
And it's
surprised.
hard.
Yeah, I'm
It's
surprised
hard.
sometimes. Things that I've done, some little bit on something, some little thing in a movie someplace, and people, oh man, that's you. I know that's you. Because Dave Fennoy has a Dave Fennoy style. Bill Ratner has a Bill Ratner style.
But the mature style is tough to get to. You and I both have a radio background. You and I both did as young
Yeah.
men in our 20s commercial radio. 75 degrees outside, with the default read, with the way you kind of close off your doors, it's kind of an FM sound in the late 70s. Um, And I remember being in a Mexicana Airlines session. It was just me and this wonderful woman who was the creative services director directing me. And I did the spot a couple of times, and she was, nodding her head, and I had auditioned and gotten the gig. And she said, how you and I were talking just a minute or so ago about the weather in LA, blah, blah. Do it like that. And I realized I was not doing it like I talk. And it was the best direction I had ever gotten. So I came down out of that FM kind of default read, which was my unconscious read.
It was your
Single.
fallback. It was what you had learned to do.
And so I realized that one of the hardest things for a voice actor to do, especially in commercials or narrations on Discovery or MTV, is to be yourself.
Yeah.
I have a dear friend who was in a big show for years and years, and the show got canceled after 10 years. And he said, what about this voiceover thing? I said, just come on over, read some copy, we'll record some stuff, you'll send it to your agent. And he was a wonderful naturalistic actor. He got into the booth, and suddenly his voice like it was 1919. And
it was that damn microphone.
Yeah, it was the damn microphone that made him sound like he was about to crash in the Titanic.
Yeah.
And I said, where did this mid-Atlantic accent come from? It's not 1921.
Well, people have misconceptions about voiceover. One of the things you talked about when the person told you, hey, why don't you do this the way you just spoke to me? One of the things I suggest for students often is to record yourself when you're in just normal situations. You're talking with your family, you're having a beer and watching a game with the boys, you're whatever it might be. Record yourself long enough that you forgot you did it. Give it a good 15, 20 minutes, then go back and see what you sound like. And just like we all learned the rhythms and the phrasing of some of our favorite voiceover actors, learn the rhythms and the phrasing of yourself. Where is your voice placed when you are just being you?
And that's hard. That's the trick. I teach a couple times a year at the Screen Actors Guild Foundation, and where we built a studio in memory of Don LaFontaine. And whether you're in the union or not, you can take classes. And I do it as a volunteer. And we're sitting there philosophizing, and I'm directing, and suddenly it hit me one night. The only direction that I really should give is, what does this character sound like? What do you think they should sound like? And rather than you picture yourself behind a bar and you're talking to a jackass, it's what do they sound like? And that's a very difficult question to answer, even though all the voices are in our heads. I mean all of us, from the time we're inside our mothers in utero and she's watching TV or listening to the radio in the car, like I said earlier,
we've heard it all.
Voices. We've heard it all. The greatest actors in the world, we've heard it all. And the trick is to find those voices and do them the way you do them, with your Cleveland accent or your LA accent or your Phoenix accent or your Boston accent.
Bring an honesty to them.
Yeah.
Bring an honesty. Let it come from here and here, and that's all you need. I want to change the subject. You have become a storyteller, which you're doing right now, as a matter of fact. But you are an award-winning storyteller. Tell me how you got into that, and what does it entail? Are you writing your own stories? Are you taking stories from other people? Tell me.
Well, I have a background as a theater actor, and we're not talking big time Broadway. We're talking, 65-seat black boxes, they call them, in Minneapolis and
oh, you weren't at the Guthrie?
No, sir. I never made it to the Guthrie. Never made a dime in the theater.
I was a theater major in college in Minnesota at McAllister.
Well, I flunked out of college, Dave. So McAllister. I
Well,
worked in
I quit after a
Minneapolis.
couple of years and went on the road as a musician, and then went back and finished stuff at Howard. But yeah, I was a theater major for a while too. But
Well, so
but do go
one,
ahead. I'm sorry, I just felt the need to insert.
one of the biggest compliments I ever got was from the great actor Ron Perlman,
Mm.
who I met at a party, and I really didn't realize who he was. And he said, "Oh, you're from Minneapolis? Yeah, I'm from Minneapolis." He said, "Wait a minute. In 1972, you said you did Alice in Wonderland at the Minnesota Ensemble Theater?" And I said, "Yeah, I played the March Hare and the." I remember that show, man. That was the greatest show in the world. That was the show that made me want to become an actor. And I said, "Really? Oh, that's great." And my wife walked into the room, and I said, "Ron, would you repeat that story for my wife?" Any consultant does this. He walks away. And she said, "What was that about?" Um, so I was in a play in Oakland, directed by the great R.G. Davis of the San Francisco Meme Troupe, and he was trying to stage this Brecht story, and it was a battle, and there were 16 of us on stage, including Joe Spano and Richard Hirschfeld, and and I just waved my hand. I said, Ronnie, this is, we're all stepping on each other's feet. I mean, this is like a third grade history pageant. Why don't you just have somebody sit on a stool and tell the story for 5 minutes for this scene? Oh, yeah? Well, you want to do that? And I said, I'm not saying me. Get Joe Spano to do it. He's, a big time actor. And get Herschel to do it, whatever. No. Anybody else want to do it? Nobody raised their hand. All right, Ratner, meet me in my office. He had purchased a church on College Avenue in Berkeley. And he, of course, had the minister's office, which was, muted colors and beautiful hardwood shelves and so on. Meet me there in 3 hours, memorize the damn story. So I went home and did, and came back, and he put his face right up to mine. Okay, do it. And I started in for about 20 seconds. I don't know what you're talking about. This doesn't read. Do it again. And I thought either I could start crying and wimp out, or just do what he said. He was the director. He'd hired me. He was paying me. So that was. He said, "All right, you got it. Go home, memorize it. You got it." So that was the beginning. And then came the Moth storytelling. Everybody's heard the Moth on the radio. Some people have probably attended the Moth. It's in every town in America, and it's overseas as well. And Moth storytelling was true stories. Back in 2010, um, I was in New York, and a friend said, "Have you ever done the Moth?" I said, "The what?" And he said, "There's, celebrities are hosting. It's in a bar in New York, and it's really cool, and people are telling true stories." So I memorized a story about being in a play with Gary Marshall, and a school play where kids went to school, and called him up. I said, "Well, I'm coming this weekend." He said, "It's not this weekend, it's next weekend." I wasn't going to be in New York next weekend. So I went back to LA, and there was one little Korean barbecue place in East Hollywood that hosted the Moth Story Slam. And so I did another story on a theme and went, and somebody actually got up and harassed me in the back and went, I think the theme was firsts. And so my story was about the first time I ever quit therapy. And the woman who must have been a Scientologist in the back went, "Yeah, good for you." About 30 people in the audience. But it was so fun writing these little 750 word, 2.5 page things, and then kind of memorizing them, but making it a story. And I ended up in Jonesboro, Tennessee, and there's Story Slam there, and in story festivals around the country. And it really, uh, it certainly wasn't stand up comedy, but it kind of looked like stand up comedy. And some of the stories were fun, some of them were dramatic. And I was able to hear brilliant storytellers, out of the Ozarks and the Appalachians and everywhere else. And it fed my voiceover career.
Yes.
I was doing Hyundai spots for a few years. And Jeff Bridges was doing the nationals. I was doing the local tags, put my daughters through college. And on the ISDN was one of the producers down in Irvine, California. And he said, "Hey, Bill, you're doing our voiceovers, right?" I said, "Yeah." but I was just up in L.A. and saw you live at the Moth Storytelling last night. Oh, it was great, man. And I said, thank you. But inside I was going, yes, yes, because ad agencies and networks and movie trailer companies were all saying, we don't want actors, we want storytellers for our voiceovers. And I thought, thank goodness that there is now for me, and at least in the image of this one employer, the image of me as not just an announcer, but a storyteller. So not only was it really fun and interesting, and I got to fly to strange places and tell stories in noisy bars and smelly coffee houses, but it fed me as a performer, as a voiceover person.
Something that you could do not for the money, but for the soul. That also helped you make more money in voiceover. Yeah.
And it also
When you
it
mentioned
also made me admire.
storytelling is a little bit like being a comedian. The best comedians are storytellers. You
Yeah,
know, they're not telling jokes. I mean, there might be a joke within the story or jokes at the end of the story, but they're storytellers.
yeah, I see.
And there's something very universal about the stories they tell to hit that humanity in us all. Now we have a little bit more time. We got about 20 minutes. So if you have a comment, if you have a question for Bill Ratner, now would be a really good time to get it in. There are a few questions, not so many questions, some comments that have come already. But I want to talk about another thing that's not really voiceover related, uh, but you wrote a book. Um, and it's not a it's a self help book, sort of parenting for the digital world. There it is. Wait a minute. Let me give you the big camera here so everybody can see the whole thing. There it is. Oh, well, I'll move my face over here. Parenting
Well,
for the
this,
what
you
now?
know,
Now, what inspired you to do that? How long did it take you? And are you on anybody's bestseller list?
well, the answer is no. You and I were talking about ABC for years. You and I
Yeah.
both did promo with ABC, and one day, um, a new producer came in, handed me the copy for some network promo, and said, "Wait a minute, are you the guy who doesn't let his daughter watch television?" And I said, "Well, I mean, we watch. I watch stuff on Saturday morning where there's times, and we watch videos and stuff. But yeah, I don't.
How
She
old
does
were your
not.
girls then?
I think Ariana was 6, and her little sister hadn't been born yet. And uh, I said, but yeah, she does not have free reign over the television set. And he said, well, wait a minute, I don't get it. We pay you to tell people to watch TV, but you don't let your daughter watch television. And I thought, now this is a really interesting question. And then I looked at him and I said, look, I have two jobs. One is I'm a professional union announcer, paid to tell people to watch TV. And the other is I'm a parent, two totally separate jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
What am I going to do as a parent? And I was volunteering at the time. When GI Joe came out, it was the biggest marketing campaign in the history of children's television, selling all those action figures and everything else. And so I created a program for the LA Unified School District called TV Cartoon Scandals. And I offered myself for free to schools, and I would, 2, 3 times a week, I'd go spend an hour at an elementary school or junior high, or sometimes high schools, talking about how commercials were made. And I was in a storytelling festival in Utah, and a woman said, have you ever written a book about this? And I said, no, why do you ask? And she said, because my husband and I just started a publishing company called Familia's Books, Books for the Family. And I thought, oh, well, that's cool. And they sent me a book contract, which I'd never seen in my life. And so I thought, well, goodness gracious, this is cool. Um, So I wrote a chapter and a chapter outline about the workshops I was teaching kids and our experiences and GI Joe and blah blah. And I came up with 85 pages and sent it in, and the publisher wrote back and said, "This is just great, but we're not going to publish an 85-page book. Double it, and we'll publish it." So I didn't know what to do. So I actually
Just make the
enrolled in
letters really a lot bigger.
a really big, yeah,
Just
really
make it all really big, and twice as
from
big. You
12
probably get
point.
twice as many pages.
I thought about that, 12 to 24 point. It didn't work. And I actually enrolled in an MFA program, low residency
MFA.
Masters of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, at out in Palm Desert. The University of California, Riverside had a wonderful low residency program with nonfiction section with writers from the LA Times and people who'd written memoirs, and they helped me finish the book. They said, interview parents, interview kids. And so this was my first book, and I'm very proud of it.
Oh, you're gonna make me
Parenting the
move
Digital
myself
Age.
again. There we go.
It's like a memoir, and it's like if you have kids or grandkids, or you're curious about how the media works with children, especially these days with COVID. Man, oh man, parents are having to deal with what do I do with my kid? I can't get a babysitter. And that led me, further into storytelling, and it led me into write poetry. And I am now in
Oh, got to move
uh,
again.
Best Small Fictions 2021. Best Small
Oh,
Fictions 2021
now
comes out
these
every year.
the best small. Now, are these stories that you have written, or is it a
Uh,
compilation?
yeah, with me and 100 other micro fiction writers. And I'm having a great time these days. As Don LaFontaine said, just take a book of poetry down to your studio and read it. Um, I've discovered poetry. So even during COVID, I've done some live readings. I'm scheduled to do a Zoom reading for that to promote that book.
Well, I hate to put you on the spot. Actually, I don't. Do you have anything prepared, memorized, that we
Why,
could we
Dave?
get a
I
could get a
just
performance?
this
Yeah,
I won't
I've
do
just marked this page. I was hoping you would ask.
it. This is called Quarantine Ride. I want a limo for this. A huge stretch limo like the one Sinatra rode in, a black one, longer than a semi. I'll stick my head out the sunroof and breathe and sneeze from the pollen and smell Tommy's chili cheeseburgers and kimchi on 6th Street, deep fried Snickers at the LA County Fair, runner's sweat, rubber on racing bikes at the Venice Pier, fried catfish and brine, all in the air. And it goes on and on from there, Dave.
All right. Bravo,
So,
bravo. Wait a minute. Where is it? There it is. Oh, all
so
right.
yeah, you can go on Sonder Press, Sonder. You can Google the best small fictions 2021, and it's me and about 100 other writers, and yeah, fun stuff.
Now, let me ask you this: how'd you get your daughter into voiceover? And she's having
You
a
know,
great career, by the way.
yes, she is. She did put some crazy stuff up on TikTok just for fun, and has 200,000 followers, and is teaching, and she's doing games, voices, and so on. She had bright red, carrot red hair as a little girl, and she was approached. She and my wife would be out shopping, and casting directors would come up and say, she has this wonderful hair. She could work as a model. So we didn't want to get her into movies and television big time, because
We already have. She's not watching TV. we
yeah,
don't.
really.
We don't
Right,
want her.
right. But we thought commercials would be fun for her, and modeling would be fun. We didn't want to get her a big time agent to get her into TV shows and movies, because that could really destroy a kid. But after school, my wife would take her on auditions, and my wife was in the IATSE, the Stage Workers Union, and so she knew about showbiz and so on. And she ended up getting modeling gigs and television commercials with this bright red hair. And then we brought her into Sutton Barthenari, the agent that you and I shared years ago, to audition for a couple of things. And she was a good reader in school. And so she started doing voiceovers. and went to NYU as a drama grad, breezed through doing brilliant work in 4 years, spent a few months in New York, spent about a year in LA looking for work, and decided, you know what? I like voiceovers. And that was it. And she's been climbing the ladder of professional voiceovers. She's 34 years old, and she'll work into her 70s or 80s. Um, she's I've always known, not because I was her daddy, well, maybe 10%, that she was a brilliant character actor, is a brilliant performer, and all that. Somebody said to me once, so she's not. She's not a movie star. Are you sorry you spent that money on her college education? And I said, look at what she's doing.
Jesus.
She's a voice actor. She's working for 2, 3, 4 employers a day, doing stuff that on-camera actors would die for.
Yeah.
So I remember the great Tress MacNeille,
Ah,
who you and I both know, who's in The Simpsons and been in The Simpsons ever since the beginning.
not to
I
mention the
asked her,
Animaniacs.
she was a very good-looking woman, and I said to her, I said, so you do a lot of on-camera stuff, don't you? She goes, are you kidding me? It would screw up my voiceover career. And so that's where Ariana is at, and I'm, needless to say, incredibly proud. And yeah, I'm sure that she listened through the floor from my basement, going up to the bedroom, going to do it tonight. Da, da, da. So she does it all.
Yeah.
She does promo. She does the occasional trailer. Lots of game voices and crazy stuff.
Oh, good for her. Good for her.
Yeah.
I know you're proud, Dad. Got a comment or question here. Jay Horace Black, who joins us every week. Bill, very insightful. Really enjoying your interview. Wisdom, priceless. Any one or two things or more that you would recommend voice actors do daily to be and stay ready?
Jay, there's a wonderful website called voiceoverresourceguide.com.
Ah,
One word, voiceoverresourceguide.com. And you can go to the New York portal, the LA portal, but listen to voiceover demos like Dave and I were talking a few minutes ago. And just go through that website, which is, that's the brilliance of the internet for voiceover people these days, is you go on a site like voiceoverresourceguide.com or acx.com. acx.com.
oh, to listen to the audiobook narrators.
Yeah, and these websites are very deep and very dense, and the more time you can geek out on voiceovers, and the more time you can spend listening and imitating and recording yourself, and go on Facebook and find Facebook groups for free. They call them workout groups, voiceover workout groups, where you can get a couple of friends, 3, 4 friends together, or a group that already exists. Say, hey, I'd like to work with you guys. And you meet on Facebook, or you meet on the phone, or you meet on Zoom, and nobody's paying anybody any money, and you direct each other, and you warm up, and you work out. That's the hard thing for voice actors.
Ooh, I'm sorry. That was such good advice.
The hardest thing for voice actors is to find the time, is to grab the time, is to steal the time from your day, from your week, when you can be on mic voice acting. And it's harder than it is for on camera or stage actors, because stage actors, all they got to do is just take a class, and they got an assignment, and they got to memorize lines, and they do a scene study with their partner in their apartment, and they're working.
I want to tell you, Bill, one of the best things I did for my career is just what you're talking about. After a few months in town and taking a lot of classes, which was also a very good thing for my career, I started thinking, well, I can't continue to spend this much money every month on classes. I got to do something else. And I discovered that there were some old timers of voiceover, old timers for you and I at the time, who'd had voiceover workout groups for years. And they'd meet up once a week or every couple of weeks and read copy and critique each other. So I started one. And it was one of the best things that I could have done, not just for the critiques you got and the growth that you got from hearing ideas from other people whose ears and heads you respect, but for that 15, 20 minutes at the very beginning where you're talking about the things that are going on in your life, where gee, I think my agent's going to drop me, or I don't have an agent, or gee, I was close to getting this gig, and just the psychological help from talking with somebody that's going through the same thing that you go through. Because your mama, your daddy, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, husbands, wives, they don't know. They don't know. They can listen and want to understand, but they don't.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And the more, what it's said that the greats, the classical greats, the acting greats, the artist greats, the musician greats, spend 10,000 hours before they are truly great.
Yeah.
And for the voice person, just spending time, whether it's going on a voiceover site on the internet and listening to voiceover demos. On voiceoverresourceguide.com, you'll find all the agents that represent voiceover. You can listen to the celebrities. You can search celebrities on the agency sites, from Southern Bartholomei to Cunningham to Atlas, on and on and on. But just spending the time. And the most wonderful and the most challenging thing about voiceovers is it's not as cut and dried as theatrical or on-camera acting. It's not as cut and dried or as controlled as the music industry. It's not as cut and dried and as controlled as the fine art industry. Voiceovers is still kind of under the covers, under the wire, behind the scenes, which makes it a little bit Wild West, makes it creatively challenging, and also gives you that many more opportunities to worm your way in and to just do it, to just go, you know what, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm a voiceover.
Got a couple more questions for you. I promised you. I always try to get out here right at 7. Andy Winslow, who is rocking the world in the voiceover industry, she's got a question for both of you. How do you keep your crafts fresh after years of experience? How do you discover new motivations? Thank you.
The great Andy Winslow, who taught me how to use a 9-iron on a golf course, and has gone on to become a huge star.
Yeah, she's been a guest here. She's amazing.
I love you, Andy. I got a golf ball on the mouth the other day at that Las Feliz course.
Was it tasty?
I'm fine. You can tell. Anyway, how do you keep it going? I actually still study voice production, to teach me to stay relaxed, to literally let the throat relax, let the voice resonate in the face rather than just in the voice box, and is to study. How do you keep it going? How do you keep the technique going? Radio people can tend to get cynical because radio is a tough business. I've been fired from 65 radio stations. That's what you hear from your radio friends.
If you haven't been fired in radio, you haven't really been in radio.
Right. I think actors are less cynical, but the least cynical among us hold the belief that the older you get as a voice actor, the better you can get. And you do so by doing stuff we've been talking about. I still listen to people's voiceover demos. I still, during a commercial break on television, when I'm watching MSNBC or whatever, my kids will say, "Dad, shut up, stop." I'm imitating John Hamm on a Mercedes commercial. But I keep moving my mouth. I keep studying. I do study voice production with professional voice coaches, just to keep my voice well-oiled. I think that's a partial answer to your question, Andy. Andy Winslow, ladies and gentlemen, you're a star.
Yes, she is. Got another question here. Theodore Mezzacapo, question for both of you. Do you ever go back and record the old role to see different ways you could have approached it?
You know, Theodore, I've had the same gig for 40 years, working for television stations. And tonight on Eyewitness News. So for the last 40 years, I've been doing exactly what you asked about, going back to the same gig, the same genre, and trying to do it better day after day after day. If I were really cynical, I'd go, you got one take, and it was just the same old crap. But it's not the same old crap. The news changes every day, and the world changes
And the
every day.
world, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And as the world changes, if you don't change, if you don't have some growth, sooner or later you're going to fall by the wayside. It's most evident in the people that we used to know, that we ran into in stations, that when the cell phones came in, oh, I don't want to be that tied, send me an email. And sooner or later, the technology becomes a juggernaut that you either get on board and go on that ship, or it's going to leave you behind. None of us are, all of us are expendable. I'll put it that way. So if you want to stay relevant, you got to work to be relevant.
And voice acting is a commercial art. We're doing what the marketplace asks us to do, which makes it hard for the creative person. I see myself as a commercial artist, and so I have to find creativity in what I do in order to keep it interesting, in order to keep going, in order to stay naive and childlike and excited.
What you just said there, staying naive and childlike, enjoying it, having fun doing it. When it's not fun anymore, you're really just not going to be good at it. Hey, listen, we could probably fill up another half hour or two. But Bill, I feel like I got to hang out with you, and we haven't hung out in a long time. All we needed was the rest of the family, and maybe some food, some wine, and who knows what else.
What fun. Mr. Dave, I love you, buddy. What a great show. You're a huge star. I'm honored, and this has really been a great chat.
Come on now, Mr. Bill Ratner. Um, you're one of the best that ever did it and got away with it. All right, my friend. I will talk to you soon. By the way, say happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. My birthday's tomorrow. How did you know?
Oh, goodness gracious. I know that you're going to be 42 and you look this way because you've led a
Oh, yeah.
hard life.
Actually, no,
Right.
45. 45.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and I'm
Happy
going to tell
day.
this story for you and everybody. I'm flying off to Mexico tonight.
Woo.
My daughter planned a whole surprise trip for my birthday. Her family, my wife and I, flying to Mexico for the weekend and partying down. And then she got COVID,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
and she
Oh.
can't go. But my wife and I are going. Me and Mo are going. I feel a little guilty, but I'm thankful to my daughter. But we're gonna have a good time. But man,
My younger daughter got COVID as well. She did just fine.
yeah.
She's
Oh yeah,
she's
she's about out of it now. She was, but you got to quarantine for a certain amount of time, so she'll be all right.
Sending healthy vibes, travel safely, and bien viaje.
Yeah, whatever that meant.
And man, my shoes are in the closet, but the purple is in the tree.
All right, my friend. As we get out of this thing, and God knows when that's going to be, let's all get together and have some dinner.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Bill Ratner, one of the nicest and most talented guys in this business, and I'm proud and happy to be able to call him a friend. Want to thank you for joining me again. Ask Dave Fennoy Anything every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, Facebook Live, unless I'm out of town or sick or something. These live on my YouTube channel, Dave Fennoy Voiceover Training. And if you are interested in voiceover coaching, you can visit davefennoy.com. click on the Study VO tab, and away we go. So, until next time, book something.